All right. Our next section is on euthanasia, which is a controversial moral issue. Euthanasia literally means mercy killing in Greek. It's quite a bit more technical when we get into the ethical issue here for us. It basically has to do with end of life issues and whether someone should be allowed to die. And I know it's a daunting subject. However, I picked this subject because it's probably one that's going to affect every single person. Unless you get struck by lightning or hit by a car, you're gonna die of in a medical setting. Not to mention the fact that if it doesn't happen to you, it's probably going to happen to someone you know, your parents, your loved someone. So anyway, yeah, it's maybe a little depressing, but it's also something that maybe you should think about. Now, there are 6 types of euthanasia, and so try not to get confused between all these different types of euthanasia. It's also a question of which ones are legal and which ones are illegal. That's not so, try to, there's a difference between the ethical issue and the moral issue, the ethical and moral issue and the legal issue on the other side. Yeah, legality is not the same thing as being ethical, but they're closely related, as I mentioned that when I was talking about Lindemann. Okay, so the 6 types are active voluntary euthanasia, active non-voluntary euthanasia, active involuntary euthanasia, passive voluntary euthanasia, passive non-voluntary euthanasia, and passive involuntary euthanasia. So first let's start with the active versus passive. So there's half of them are active and half of them are passive. Active means actually killing, okay? So you actually kill, usually yourself, okay, so suicide, but it's actively killing a patient. And I say patient because this is not just suicide. The question of euthanasia comes up when someone is terminally ill and has like less than a year to live. Someone is dying of a terrible disease and they don't want to persist and fight the disease anymore. And so maybe they'd rather just get it over with, before the disease gets to be unbearable. All right. So look, be careful. This is not just suicide because you're depressed. In fact, a lot of people, that's one thing everybody says, don't let just depressed people commit suicide. There has to be a diagnosis of some disease that you're going to die of soon. Okay. And if you're going to die of this disease soon, anyway, should you be allowed to kill yourself, or maybe someone else kill you? That's active. Passive is letting yourself die, or someone letting you die. So it's not actively killing, it's letting die. Okay, now, and so in this context, again, when you're sick and dying anyways, that would mean that you refuse treatment. You say, I'm done with the treatment. I'm just going to let the disease take me over. I don't want any more treatments. They're not going to work anyways. They're only prolong my life a little while. Maybe the treatment's worse than the disease. Often that happens. And so I don't want the treatment anymore. I'm just going to let the disease take its course and I'm going to die. So that's passive. So, the way that it's usually phrased is killing versus letting die. All right, let's start with the passive first, okay? Because that one's maybe a little bit easier to deal with or to explain. Passive voluntary means the patient gets to make the choice. That's what voluntary means. It's voluntary. You have a choice. So the patient decides they don't want any more treatment. They stop the treatment. They die. You can legally do this for sure. I mean, if you don't want a treatment, you can just say, I'm done with that. I don't want any more chemotherapy or whatever it is, right? I'm done with the treatments. I don't want them anymore. That's legal and happens all the time, by the way. Yes. You know, patients say, I'm done. I'm sick. I don't want any more treatments. I'll just live as long as I can and see what happens, right? And, you know, well, see how long I live, because this is end of life situation, okay? Passive non-voluntary. That's when the patient, non-voluntary and involuntary are different, and you got to be careful with those because they sound so similar. Non-voluntary is when the patient can't decide. So you're incapacitated. It could be that you're unconscious, yes, but it also could be that you're just incompetent, right? So maybe you're senile or you have Alzheimer's or maybe you're a child. Children can't make medical decisions for themselves. So someone else has to make that decision for you. The person that makes the decision for you is called your surrogate in the lingo here. And it's always a family member, okay? In the United States, it's always a family member. It's different in other countries around the world, but in the United States, it's a family member, okay? In fact, just to point out this, so when gay marriage went to the Supreme Court, that case was about this because it was a couple of women that had been living together for, decades, and one of them got terminally ill and the other one was incapable of making medical decisions for her, spouse. She wasn't, they couldn't get married, so not really a spouse, but the argument was that was completely unfair. Because usually the spouse is the person that makes the decision, or the children, or you can actually, if you write up a legal document, you can assign someone to be your surrogate, okay, which is probably not a bad idea. That's part of the reason I'm teaching this, is because maybe you might want to think about who would you want making medical decisions for you, and maybe you should put that in writing in a legal document somewhere. Not that expensive, and it's probably, I would like to know who is the one making those decisions for me personally. Anyway, it's almost always a family member. I mean, pretty much, it has to be a family member. Sometimes there has been fights between family members. Like there's a case, a famous case where the parents wanted one thing and the spouse wanted another, and that went to the Supreme Court too, Florida case. Anyway, but generally speaking, if you just look broadly speaking, how does this work in the United States? This is legal as well, okay? Because if you're incapacitated and your family has to make the decision, they are the ones entitled to make the decision, not the doctors, no one else. The family decides whether you should get a treatment or not. And a treatment could be like life support. So if someone's on life support and expected not to recover, well, it's up to the family to decide whether they want to continue that life support or not, right? So this happens again all the time, right? Do you want to take out the breathing tube and let the patient die? You have to make that choice. If you're the surrogate and you're the family member, you have to make that decision. That's how the law works here. Okay, quickly note, that's not, like I said, not the case around the world. In Europe, the doctor makes the decision. The family doesn't have a say, which is very interesting, right? but the doctor is the one that makes the decision in most of Europe. Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of countries, so they have different laws in individual countries, but generally there it's the doctor. But here, it's the family, it's the surrogate, it's whoever you've given legal authority to make your medical decisions for you. That's letting die too, because I mean, the family is going to take you off the treatment, the life support, the whatever, and you're going to die. Now, passive involuntary is when the patient is cognizant and can make a choice. So it is their choice again, but for whatever reason, they're denied the treatment anyways. In other words, they're like, I want that treatment, and the hospital, the doctor, somebody says, no, you can't have it. Technically, this is illegal. Now, you and I probably know in the real world, even though it is illegal to do this because of finances and insurance and all kinds of bullshit, it happens, right? Sometimes people want treatments and they can't get them, right? But technically, it is illegal to do that. You're supposed to get whatever treatment you want, no matter what. Well, not whatever treatment. Let me be cautious here. If it's an experimental treatment or something like that, they may deny you on that basis. But if it's not an experimental treatment, you should be allowed to get that treatment, no matter who you are. It should be granted to. It should be allowed. Okay, it's illegal for the hospital to not treat you. This is true of everything, not just end of life issues. I mean, if you go in there if you go to the hospital with a broken leg and they say, you don't have insurance, get the hell out of here, you can sue them because they have to treat you. I mean, that's the law. You have to treat people no matter whether they can pay or not. There's, of course, all sorts of consequences and other things going on with that, but all right, let's just say it's illegal. It's a complicated issue, all right? I'm trying to make it as easy as I can here, but that, All right, so let's go to the active case, active voluntary. Okay, so that's the patient decides, hey, I don't want to live anymore. The Brittany Maynard case is a really good example of this. Perhaps I should post that. But anyways, the patient decides, I don't want to, look, this disease is taking my soul, or it's causing, or more, I mean, I guess the most standard one is, I'm going to be in a tremendous pain, or I am in tremendous pain. I don't want to endure this pain for another freaking 2 months or 2 weeks even. I just give me some medication or something. Well, medication, period. Some kind of either orally or injection or whatever, but I want to die. I can't handle it anymore. And there's a lot of diseases that are extraordinarily painful but debilitating in other ways. And you'll see this in the reading. I mean, sometimes it comes down to your self-respect, when you're completely withering away and wasting away, and you can't do anything for yourself, and you're going to die very soon anyways. A lot of people are like, let's just do this. Let's just get it over with. All right. Why are you making me suffer? And that's what the point of euthanasia is to reduce suffering, right? It's like, and if you probably heard the term, the only time you probably heard the term euthanasia is when you euthanize an animal, and that's not, look, sometimes when they call it euthanizing animals when they're perfectly healthy, that's not but if your dog or cat has like tumors and they're dying, you euthanize them to prevent suffering. It's the same concept with human beings here. Okay, so you know, that you're dying slowly, and why do you want to die slowly? I mean, I don't I, I don't want to suffer through this pain, and you know, is what the person would say, and I would rather just choose my own time and maybe die with dignity, which is a slogan, by the way, of the people that are for this, dying with dignity. I want to die with dignity, decide my own time and place, gather my family around and say goodbye, and not wither away in some hospital bed having tubes and needles poking me and, you know, just being in terrible pain the whole time. Okay, so, but it is suicide, you know, technically you're saying, kill me, I want to die. Now, importantly, I need to point this out. The issue of active voluntary euthanasia, that's the most pressing issue in terms of legality, and probably, you know, the thing that we really want to address here in this discussion. Because should this be legal or not? Okay, now it is suicide, so that may sound crazy because can't you just kill yourself? And by the way, a lot of people do. I mentioned this too. I mean, not long ago, there was a famous movie producer that was dying, that had cancer and was dying and jumped off a bridge. That was, people do this, right? But you know, he didn't want to suffer through the end of it. He was like, I've had enough. But suicide is look, it's not a great, that's not pretty. I mean, holy crap, really? That sounds like a pretty harsh option, because what if the guy jumped off the bridge, broke every bone in his body, and he's still dying of cancer? Now he's laying in a hospital with multiple broken bones and dying. That's not ideal. I mean, that sucks. I mean, that's terrible. The real question is, can the doctor assist you? That is, can the doctor administer drugs to you, or at least give you drugs that will help you, that will kill you, right? That will help you commit suicide in a painless way. In the United States, that is legal for doctors to do that in a number of states. Montana, Oregon was the first, Washington. There's several. There's quite a few, but not all of them. Less than, you know, what it's interesting. It's hard to keep track of because it changes a lot, but 7 or 8, I think. I think it's like in California is a good example of that, because they actually passed a law making it legal here, but it's caught up in lawsuits, and it's not legal, but it is legal, but it's not legal because they can't, there's a hold on it in the courts, and you know, some of this is not easy. But anyway, that's can you get doctor assisted suicide to help you die a passive easy death? I mean, you're not going to be with your family. Like I was saying before, deciding to die and then then jump up and hang yourself, or, you know, of course not. I mean, that would not to mention, you know, most suicides fail, and if you're deathly ill, can you even walk to a bridge or do something like hang yourself or something? I mean, if you're deathly ill, because you're not going to do this way ahead of time. You got to wait. You want to wait till the disease is getting to be so bad you can't handle it anymore. Well, at that point, you may be unable to walk and do things, right? But should you have the legal right to say, all right, I'm done, I don't want to endure it anymore, and be given the lethal dose of drugs? All right, passive non-voluntary. This is when this goes back to the surrogates. The patient's killed. It's not the patient's decision, because the patient is incapable of making a decision, again, in a coma, mentally incapacitated, can the family make a decision for you to kill you and give you a lethal dose of drugs or whatever? This is illegal everywhere. Okay, I don't know anywhere this is legal. I mean, not even not in the world, not only the United States, not legal. The family can never make the decision. Um, so some people do argue that the family should be able to make the decision because, hey, I know what I know Grandpa wouldn't be wanted to go through this, and or whatever, so some people think that that should be a possibility. It's not but it's usually the debate focuses on active voluntary euthanasia. Not too many people advocate for active non-voluntary euthanasia. Some people do, though. I don't, I don't, not like no one does. Some people say, yeah, if my wife is dying and suffering, I should be able to make the decision to put her out of her misery, and she wouldn't want to deal. Yeah, I mean, this is sometimes this is pretty horrible, people. I hope you know this, to watch, and you're like, oh man, I wish I don't think she would want that. But it is a sketchy ground because, would she really, people, I don't mean to giggle, but, it's kind of, how much do you love your wife? Or how much are you going to inherit from your grandfather? It's open to some kind of abuse here, right? If people, it gets a little sketchy there. All right, active involuntary euthanasia is when the patient is killed and doesn't want to be killed. Now, this is flat out murder. No one condones this except for frickin' Nazis in World War II, okay? This doesn't happen. If it ever does happen, someone's going to frickin' prison, all right? So that's actually not even a contender to even, kind of don't even think about that one, because no one is for active involuntary euthanasia. Kill someone against their will when they want to live. No. All right, that doesn't happen ever. The only reason it's on the list is because some people think that if you legalize active voluntary, or especially active non-voluntary, if you legalize one or both of those, it will lead to involuntary. That is, people will be killed against their will if you allow the other things to happen. There are a lot of people that argue that might occur. So that's why you kind of need to consider that a little bit. All right, I'll get to Rachel soon.